Virgo, the sixth sign of the Zodiac, represented by a maiden carrying wheat, which is either a symbol of fertility and harvest or a sign that she's about to bake the world's most mystical baguette. It's the sign that runs from August the 23rd to September the 22nd, and if you were born in September, there's a good chance that you were a Christmas present. But Virgo is far more than agricultural cosplay and festive hanky-panky. It's the sign of details, the small print, the bits no one reads until they're getting sued. It's the sign of service, dedicated, hard-working, and willing to iron their socks. It's the sign of scrutiny, quietly rearranging the furniture and leaving passive-aggressive notes about the dusting. So grab your clipboard, your magnifying glass, and your spreadsheet, because Virgo season has arrived, and the cosmos is about to get organized. The Fool's Odyssey. The Fool and his canine companion have decided to travel to the Malvern Autumn Show so they can visit the annual root vegetable competition. I can't wait. Last year they set the record for the world's heaviest onion. Eagerly he gets on the bus. However, it would seem that in all the excitement he forgot to check where the bus was actually going. Now approaching Alpha Virginis. Thank you for travelling with Cosmic Carches. Please take your rubbish with you. I'm sick of finding bottles of piddle under the seats. Excuse me, I think I've got on the wrong bus. Can you take me back home, please? No chance, mate. I'm just about to knock off. You'll have to wait for the next one. Will that one take me home? It'll take you somewhere. Anyway, clear off. I'm hungry and there's a starfish and chips with my name on it. The Fool finds himself floating around in space. Suddenly, he's greeted by a maiden holding a sheaf of wheat.
Hello there. What are you up to?
I was on my way to see a giant onion, but I think I got on the wrong bus. By the way, who are you?
I'm the Virgin Maiden, patron saint of all incels and Cinderella.
How do you know Cinderella's a virgin?
'Cause she runs away from balls.
Right. Anyway, where am I?
You're at Spica, the star system also known as the Ear of Corn.
Looks like there's two of them.
Yes, it's a binary system. Otherwise it would be a unicorn.
It's very beautiful. Can I take a picture of it?
You can try, but it will probably come out grainy. Anyway, do you have any food? I'm starving.
No, I haven't. Why don't you eat some of that wheat you're carrying?
Oh, I never eat my own wheat. It gives me a headache.
Why is that then?
Because it's my grain.
I see. Well, I need to get back home or I'm going to miss the vegetable competition.
No problem. You just need to fill in a lost passenger form in triplicate. Oh, and alphabetize these nebula.
Alphabetize the nebula? There's millions of them.
Well, you'd better get cracking then.
He says he doesn't know the alphabet.
Then he can count the asteroids instead. No excuses.
This is worse than the queue at the post office.
Attention to detail builds character. Also, you've spelt your own name wrong.
I can never remember if it's 1-0 or 2.
Well, you've written foul. Are you a chicken?
Look, I really need to get back home. Isn't there anything you can do?
Oh, I suppose I could let you off, seeing as you're a Taurus. I'm trying to stop being a perfectionist. I've been working on it for ages.
Thank you so much.
Here, take this. It's a ticket on the Cosmic Constellation Express. You'll have to get it stamped at each stop or they'll throw you off. If you get all these stamps, they'll take you back home. I've put mine on there already.
That's amazing. I'll treasure this ticket.
Actually, you've already creased it, and the dog's just slobbered on it.
So where do I catch this Complication Express?
Over there on the Virgo platform. You'd better hurry, it's very punctual.
Come on then, boy. Looks like we're off on another adventure. And so, with his ticket damp and smelling faintly of dog slobber, the Fool sets off to catch the Cosmic Constellation Express. To be continued. Haven't had to say that for a while. Don't worry, we'll edit it out for the feature-length version this time. We turn now to the buttocks of destiny to chart how our Taurus Fool is faring on his journey so far. Now the Bull and the Maiden are both earth signs, practical and grounded. At first it looked like Virgo's perfectionism would get right up the Fool's cleft. But since she let him off alphabetizing the nebula and gave him a cosmic ticket, he's feeling rather grateful. So for today we swing over to the happy cheek, a rare moment of cosmic relief on Destiny's backside, leaving our arrow pointing to the right of Fate's ring piece. Will he stay on the cheerful cheek, or will he end up with a pain in the arse? Find out next time on The Fool's Odyssey.
Kippy's Quest, Kippy's Quest.
Welcome back to Kippy's Quest. On today's astrological adventure, we're looking at Virgo, the symbol, the element, and the ruling planet. We're going to leaf through history, from Babylonian grain goddesses to Roman poets. We'll wander into mythology with Estrella, the Virgin of the Stars, and peek into psychology with Carl Jung and the archetype of the cosmic perfectionist. We're going to explore their personality, the good news and the bad, and even see how they fare in romance, health, and wealth. And in Korrespondence Korner, we'll read Virgo's tarot cards, cook up a herbal dinner, and check out the matching gemstones, including some gorgeous bracelets from our friends at otterspirit.com, with a 20% discount if you use the code KIPPY20.
Why, the sheer brass neck of the man!
Yeah, alright, someone's got to keep the lights on. Do you think the fool's turnips grow out of the ground?
Yes, they do, actually.
Alright, bad analogy. I can't be right all the time.
Occasionally would be nice.
Anyway, we're talking all about Virgo. That's Virgo the Zodiac sign, not John Virgo the championship snooker player. I've got no idea if he's interested in astrology. Or if he's a Virgo. Sorry, Virgo is the last of the summer signs, and its symbol is the maiden, sometimes called the virgin, although not in the sense of someone who's waiting for the right time, or angry young men on Reddit. We're referring to the virgin goddess. Now we're going to get to the mythology later, but there are quite a few virgin goddesses scattered throughout history. The Roman goddess Diana is a good example, who was said to spurn all men who sought her hand, that she might remain a virgin forever. Paul Foster Case referred to Diana as the virgin goddess of the moon, and said that she represented the cold virginity of a cloistered devotee of the gods. Obviously none of this is to suggest that Virgos are never going to get their end away. The idea of a virgin maiden is that she belongs to no man, and is therefore a symbol of autonomy and self-possession. The other big part of Virgo's image is the wheat that she's usually shown carrying. No, she's not late for the farmer's market. Wheat has always been a symbol of harvest, fertility, and the cycle of life.
Looks like a disappointing packed lunch to me. Ow!
It's the grain that feeds whole civilizations, the difference between famine and feast, and in astrology it ties Virgo to themes of nourishment, service, and making sure the world actually runs properly. Unless you're on the keto diet, that is. So when you see the maiden with her sheaf of wheat, think of her as the guardian of the harvest, the one who plants, tends, and gathers. In other words, she cares less about romantic purity and more about making sure everyone's fed and the pantry is properly labelled. Virgo is a mutable earth sign. It's got a yin polarity and is ruled by Mercury. We'll get into what that really means for Virgo's personality later on, but just to give you a flavour, this is a sign that mixes brains with practicality. It's clever, adaptable, and knows how to turn ideas into results. Not as impulsive as fire or as dreamy as water, but always reliable, like a favourite recipe or a phone charger when you're at 2%. Now each earth sign has its own flavour. Taurus is often seen as the builder, stacking stones into castles. Capricorn is sometimes looked at as the CEO, climbing mountains in a three-piece suit just to put a flag at the top. Virgo, however, is the organiser, the one who checks the timetables, fixes the typos, and ensures the harvest actually makes it onto the kitchen table instead of rotting in the field. So that's Virgo in a nutshell, the maiden with the wheat. Practical earth energy, mutable flexibility, Mercury's brain power, and a reflective yin core. Let's have a look at how the sign has evolved through the mists of time.
The history of Virgo.
I talked in my introduction to astrology about Menelaus and Ptolemy, who are widely regarded as the ancient pioneers of the field. In Astronomica, the 5-book poem which dates back to the 1st century, Menelaus gave us one of the richest and most character-driven passages on Virgo that we find anywhere. He said, "But modest Virgo's rays give polished parts, and fill men's breasts with honesty and arts. No tricks for gain, nor love of wealth dispense, but piercing thoughts and winning eloquence. With words persuasive and with rhetoric strong, they rule and are even monarchs by their tongue." So with polished parts and honesty and arts, we get a picture of refinement, intelligence and culture. He adds no tricks for gain nor love of wealth dispense, which makes Virgo sound like the least likely sign to be caught running a crypto scam. Instead, they're blessed with piercing thoughts and winning eloquence, ruling not with armies or riches, but as he puts it, with words persuasive and rhetoric strong. So speech and persuasion is their weapon. Manilius basically says Virgos are grammar experts who could overthrow empires with a strongly worded email. They're not into shady deals or money grabs, they'd rather win the argument with rhetoric so sharp it should probably come with a warning label. He goes on to say, through nature's secrets too they boldly press, though deeply hid they meet a just success. In shorthand skilled, where little marks comprise, whole words a sentence in a letter lies. And whilst obedient hands their aid afford, prevent the tongue and fix the falling word. So here we see Virgo as the investigator, the one who boldly presses through nature's secrets, digging into mysteries others might ignore, which fits nicely with their reputation as the researchers and analysts of the Zodiac. Then Manilius gives us something really specific. Virgos are in shorthand skilled, turning whole words and sentences into little marks on a page. That's a 2,000-year-old shout out to Virgo's obsession with efficiency and detail, making them the original note takers. And I love the line about obedient hands preventing the tongue and fixing the falling words. In other words, their hands can capture speech faster than it's spoken. If you've ever watched a Virgo typing at 200 words per minute, Manilius saw that coming. He continues, but bashful modesty cast down their eyes, the best of vices, yet 'tis still a vice, because it stifles, checks, or nips like frost a blooming virtue, and the fruit is lost. Besides, though strange such influence should come from Virgo's rays, she gives a fruitful womb. Here Manilius hits on the classic Virgo paradox. Modesty is praised as a virtue, but he calls it the best of vices, still a fault if it holds you back, like a frost that kills off budding fruit. So Virgo's humility can become self-sabotage, stifling their own talents if they're too busy blushing at the spotlight. And then comes yet another cosmic twist. The sign of the Virgin is said to give a fruitful womb. Yet another paradox. The Virgin, who also represents fertility and abundance. Manilius is basically saying Virgos are modest to a fault, but productive in every other sense. Moving on to Ptolemy and the Tetrabiblos, he was less concerned with poetic license and more about a practical view of the signs, which is quite a Virgo thing in itself. Where Manilius gave us a poetic virgin holding a sheaf of wheat, Ptolemy gives us the paperwork. So Virgo is less like a goddess and more like a set of bullet points. In any case, he talks about how Mercury is exalted in Virgo and goes on to say, Mercury is of a nature opposite to that of Venus and is more dry in opposition to her. Therefore he takes his exaltation in Virgo, in which sign the autumnal dryness makes its first appearance. Ptolemy being Ptolemy, he can't just tell us Mercury is exalted in Virgo, he explains it in terms of seasonal climate. Virgo, as the start of autumn, is when dryness sets in apparently, and Mercury, he says, is a dry planet. So Mercury's right at home here, nice and crisp, although if he'd have lived in the UK, he might have had a different view on that. Also, it's interesting that he talks about Mercury being opposite in nature to Venus, because that's exactly what we see on the Tree of Life, with Venus connected to Netzach and Mercury connected to Hod. He's lining up perfectly with the Hermetic Kabbalistic structure, even though he's coming at it from a completely different cultural framework. He goes on to talk about how certain constellations connect to different animals, and he declares Virgo to be a winged constellation. This is interesting because you don't see Virgo with wings very often, but the sign is identified with Astraea, the winged goddess of justice. He says, and should the ruling places be situated in signs shaped like winged animals, as in that of Aquila, or in others of similar form, the event will take effect on birds, and will chiefly attach to those which afford food to man. You heard it here first, Virgo is in charge of chickens. Geographically, he links Virgo to Greece and its islands, which he points out in his usual dry way by saying, the people of Hellas, Achaia and Crete have a stronger familiarity with Virgo and Mercury and are therefore learned and scientific, preferring the cultivation of the mind to the care of the body. In other words, Virgo's influence makes them brainy types, less about lifting weights and more about lifting books. And yes, according to Ptolemy, if you're a Virgo, you can now claim dual citizenship in Greece and Crete. Fast forward about 1500 years and we find Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's slightly more occult take on Virgo, where he talks about the angelic ruler of the sign. In his 3 books of occult philosophy, he says, so he received from many of the ancient fathers of the Hebrews the names of angels set over the planets and signs. The idea of the 12 angels of the Zodiac comes from Revelation 21, where John is shown a vision of the New Jerusalem. It says, and he carried me away in the spirit to a great and high mountain, and shewed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. And her light was like unto a stone most precious, even like a jasper stone, clear as crystal, and had a wall great and high, and had 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels. Just as Revelation uses the number 12 to signify divine completeness, Agrippa applies it to the Zodiac, the heavenly city being mapped onto the heavens themselves. Each of those 12 angels rules over a Zodiac sign, and according to Agrippa, Virgo's ruling angel is Hamaliel, whose name means the grace of God. He's kind of like the celestial librarian, overseeing study, eloquence and agriculture. So if you ever need help with your crops, your homework or your filing system, this is your guy. Now Agrippa didn't just pull this out of nowhere. John in Revelation is echoing Ezekiel, who already described a city with 12 gates named after the tribes of the Old Testament. The early church fathers picked up on it as a symbol of divine completeness. 12 tribes, 12 apostles, 12 gates. Meanwhile, in Jewish mysticism, the Sefer Yetzirah associated the 12 simple Hebrew letters to the 12 zodiac signs. It says these 12 simple letters he designed and combined and formed with them the 12 celestial constellations of the zodiac. By the Renaissance, Agrippa connected the dots. He saw the New Jerusalem as the zodiac itself, mapped onto the gates of eternity. So that gives us a little history of Virgo. Now it's time to have a chat with the goddesses.
The mythology of Virgo.
Probably the strongest mythological association of Virgo is to the Greek goddess Astraea, but if we go back to the very beginning, we find ourselves in Mesopotamia. The Babylonians knew this constellation as Shala, a grain goddess who carried an ear of corn in her hand. She was the divine embodiment of the harvest, a cosmic reminder that if you don't plant and reap on time, you'll be chewing on clay tablets for dinner. Sometimes Virgo was also linked to Ishtar, the big-ticket Babylonian goddess of love, war and fertility. Ishtar was basically the Beyoncé of the ancient world. She did it all. But in the sky, the softer side won out, and it's Shala with her wheat stalk that seems to have planted the earliest seeds of Virgo's identity. This was the first step in a tradition that stuck. Whichever goddess she was connected to, Virgo was always imagined as a maiden who held the harvest in her hands. When astrology made its way to Egypt, the maiden in the sky found a new role. The Egyptians noticed that when the sun passed through Virgo, it marked the start of the wheat harvest along the Nile. This established Virgo as a celestial calendar reminder.
Oi, farmers, sharpen your sickles. It's bread-making season.
The goddess most linked here is Isis. Now she wasn't just a divine mother and magician, Isis also taught humanity how to farm, spinning flax and sowing grain. Divine bread would be made as part of an offering to this important goddess. For Egyptians, looking at Virgo in the heavens was like seeing Isis preside over the fertile Nile fields, ensuring that life's most basic staple kept flowing. The Babylonians may have given Virgo her wheat stalk, but the Egyptians turned that stalk into bread and treated it as a symbol of divine provision. This practical Egyptian layer cemented Virgo's link with wheat and agriculture, and it set the stage for the Greeks to pick up on the same imagery. But of course they had to add a lot more drama. When the Greeks looked at Virgo, they saw echoes of their own grain goddesses. The most obvious candidate here is Demeter, the goddess of agriculture. She's often pictured holding a sheaf of wheat, just like Virgo, and her whole identity is bound up with the fertility of the land. But Demeter's story can't be told without her daughter Persephone. When Hades abducted Persephone to the underworld, Demeter fell into grief and the crops withered. The cycle of Persephone's return each spring and descend each autumn became the mythic explanation for the seasons, and it also fits Virgo's place in the calendar. The sun enters Virgo just as summer tips into autumn, echoing Persephone's yearly journey between the worlds. So for the Greeks, Virgo embodied the rhythm of life and death, of fertility and barrenness. She was the sign that the fields were ripe, but also that winter's shadow was on the horizon. However, as I said before, probably the strongest association to Virgo is Astraea, goddess of innocence and justice. Now you might be thinking,
Hang on, I thought Libra was supposed to be the zodiac sign of justice.
and you'd be right. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn even rearranged the major arcana of the tarot so that Leo could go with strength and Libra could go with justice. Well, it just so happens that mythology has a very good answer to this little poser. Astraea was said to be the last immortal to live among humans during the Golden Age, when everything was peaceful and income tax hadn't been invented yet. But as humanity grew more corrupt, Astraea couldn't bear it. She held on longer than any of the other gods, but when wars and greed consumed the earth, she finally gave up and returned to the heavens. There she became the constellation Virgo, the eternal maiden in the sky. But she didn't leave empty-handed. Astraea's scales of justice were placed beside her, becoming the constellation Libra. It's a rare case where mythology directly explains the map of the zodiac. When you look up at the constellations of Virgo and Libra, you're looking at a goddess and her symbol side by side. Some myths even say Astraea will return one day when humanity mends its wicked ways and a new golden age will begin. Looking at how things are right now, I wouldn't hold my breath. Anyway, where Demeter and Persephone gave Virgo her agricultural rhythm, Astraea gave her a moral one, the longing for purity, order and fairness, even when the world fell into chaos. Now there's one last twist worth mentioning. In Christianity, the Virgin Mary giving birth to Jesus has been symbolically tied to Virgo. Some ancient scholars even place Virgo at the very start of the Zodiac, with Leo at the end. Interestingly, I just happen to have started my astrology series with Virgo. So from clay tablets to divine bread, and from Demeter's wheat to Astraea's scales, Virgo has always been a mirror for the values each culture held dearest. Now it's time to have a look at how all this ties in with the human mind.
The psychology of Virgo.
We're gazing up at the stars with Carl Jung, and he's brought the whole collective unconscious with him. Jung saw astrology as a symbolic language of the psyche. The signs, he argued, are archetypes, ancient patterns of behaviour woven deep into our unconscious. Now, if you're anything like me, and this kind of thing really floats your boat, then I can highly recommend Jung on Astrology, where Saffron Rossi and Kieron LeGrice have brought all his writings on astrology together in a single book. I'll put a link in the description. Anyway, Jung could get very colourful about Virgo. He wrote, "When man is roaring like a lion, there is nothing better to tame him than a virgin. She will cut the hair of the lion and make it short, like Samson and Delilah." Psychologically, the lion can be seen as our raw instinct, untamed, roaring with power. The virgin symbolises the feminine principle of discernment, the archetype that doesn't fight brute force with more brute force, but calms and refines it. It's not a million miles away from what we see on the Strength Tarot card, although that's tied to a different sign. If we look at the symbolism, Samson's hair was his strength, his wildness, his life force. To cut it short is to civilise that wild energy, to trim back the mane so it can be shaped into something useful. Virgo's archetype works the same way in the psyche. It's the part of us that takes chaos and carefully prunes it down into order. Jung goes on to say, "It is not nice, the whole symbolism is somewhat obscene." Here he moves on to the Egyptian calendar, where on the 15th of September, the left eye of the goddess is prepared to receive the god Ra, who's to walk into it. In his view, the eye is a womb symbol, a moment when the feminine principle takes the lead. Psychologically, this imagery points to Virgo as the archetype of receptivity, the yin that temporarily holds sway over the yang. The rational mind may roar and strut like Ra, but it must eventually enter the darkness of the womb, or the unconscious, if renewal is to happen. Symbolically, the goddess's eye is the image of returning to wholeness, light entering darkness, masculine energy tempered by the feminine vessel. Virgo here isn't passive, she's the one setting the stage for transformation. Jung sums all this up bluntly. Yang is under yin, woman is on top. In other words, the Virgo archetype shows us a reversal of the usual power dynamic, the feminine principle taking charge, guiding and tempering the masculine. From a Jungian perspective, this is the psyche restoring balance. The unconscious doesn't just want growth through raw force, it also requires refinement, care and receptivity. Virgo is the healer and the tamer, the part of us that knows sometimes strength is found not in domination, but in surrender. Say what you like about Jung, but he certainly knew how to take us on a wild ride. But at the heart of it, Virgo emerges as the archetype of refinement, healing and receptivity, the part of us that tames chaos into order. And with that in mind, let's bring it all back down to earth and take a look at how all this plays out in everyday life.
The personality of Virgo.
By now we know that Virgo is an earth sign, which means it's practical, grounded and a lot more interested in real results than in chasing rainbows. If fire is passion, water is feelings and air is ideas, earth is all about what actually gets done. It's bricks and mortar, soil and crops, bank accounts and shopping lists. So Earth gives Virgo its love of order, its practicality and its talent for service. It's also mutable, which gives it adaptability. Virgos can switch gears when needed, and they do it with a raised eyebrow if things aren't being done properly. Its polarity is yin, feminine or passive, which in astrology is all about receptivity, reflection and taking things inward. Virgos may look quiet, but trust me, their inner world is a buzzing command centre of list, plans, backup plans and backups for the backup plans. The sign is ruled by Mercury, planet of communication, thought and being a bit of a clever clogs. Now Mercury has another child, Gemini, but while the twins are running around shouting ideas, Virgo takes those same ideas and actually makes them happen. So first of all, the good news. Virgos are the quiet heroes of the zodiac. They're the ones who hold everything together, the steady hands behind the scenes making sure the world doesn't fall apart. They care deeply about people, about doing things right, and about making life just a little bit better for everyone around them. When you're with a Virgo, you feel looked after. They'll notice when you're tired, they'll bring you a cup of tea without you asking. They'll quietly fix the thing that's been driving you mad. And it's not about showing off or getting credit. Virgo's gift is service, not in the sense of servitude, but of genuine care. They want life to be better, tidier, healthier, calmer and kinder. They'll spot the typo, yes, but they'll also spot when you're not yourself, and they'll be the first to check in. If you've ever had a Virgo friend, you'll know what I mean. They also tend to notice the things that everyone else misses, so they're great to have on your team at the local pub quiz. Now for the bad news, and I say this with love, Virgos. All that care and attention to detail can sometimes tip over into worry, overthinking, or just being a bit too hard on yourselves, and occasionally on everyone else. You want things to be just right, the bed made perfectly, the books balanced, the washing folded like it's entering an origami competition. The trouble is, life isn't always neat. Sometimes the paint does drip, or the plan falls apart, or people get there and there mixed up. And when that happens, Virgo's inner critic can crank up the volume to 11. They don't mean to nag, it's just their brain is telling them that if we don't fix this, the universe will collapse. But here's the thing, that same drive for perfection comes from a place of deep care. It's not about being bossy, it's about wanting things to be the best they can be. And let's be honest, most of us could use a little Virgo fussing every now and then. I certainly could. So Virgos might reorganise your cutlery drawer into alphabetical order, but it's only because they care. The real question is, will they reorganise your heart?
Romance and Virgo.
When it comes to nookie, Virgo is often underestimated. People see the tidy exterior, the raised eyebrow, the meticulous attention to detail, and they assume it's all business. But beneath that calm, careful surface is an earthy, sensual heart, a curious mind, and a longing to connect. They seduce quietly with presence, patience, and the kind of attentiveness that makes you feel like you're the only person in the world. They'll notice the curve of your smile, the way your hand lingers, the small things that others miss. Because Virgo is ruled by Mercury, love often begins in the mind, with conversation, wit, in the delicious spark of curiosity. But once that connection is built, all that practicality melts down into devotion, and their earthy nature comes out to play. Slow, steady and sensual, Virgos know that pleasure is in the details, and they don't miss a single one. So yes, they may reorganise your spice rack, but in romance they'll also learn every nuance of what sets your heart and your body on fire. And with that, let's see how Virgo handles matters of the heart on our very own star-crossed dating game show.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's star-crossed. This week we've got Virgo in the hot seat. Will she connect the dots and find love, or will she nitpick her way into staying single? Let's find out as we meet three gentlemen looking for a cosmic maiden. First, we've got Sagittarius. Will he pierce Virgo's heart with Cupid's arrow, or will he miss, hit the cameraman, and end up with a custodial sentence? Next up, we've got Pisces. Will his watery charm sweep Virgo into the sea of love, or will she end up doing his laundry while he writes poems about dolphins? Finally, we've got Taurus. Will his earthly ways win Virgo's heart, or will they argue about who gets to measure the potatoes? It's time for Virgo to ask her big question.
My question is this. On our first date, how would you make it special? And more importantly, how would you make sure it was planned properly?
Easy. I'd book us one-way tickets to Machu Picchu and propose while we're bungee jumping off the Temple of the Sun.
And how about you, Pisces?
Well, first I'd take you swimming under the moonlight. Then I'd sing you a song I wrote about our souls merging like two jellyfish in a cosmic ocean. Oh, sorry, I think I've lost my wallet. Can you cover the taxi?
Same question to Taurus, please.
I'd book us a table at my favourite restaurant. Not yours, mine. Then we'd order the same dish every time we go back. Forever. 'Cause if it ain't broken and the bread's warm, why change it?
I think I'm going to go with Pisces. At least I'll always win the arguments. And someone's got to keep an eye on his wallet.
Well, they say opposites attract, but only time will tell if Pisces can swim fast enough to keep up with Virgo's to-do list. Tune in next time for more cosmic calamity. And for the signs that didn't make it onto the show, let's check out Star-Crossed Tinder Edition.
looking for someone who appreciates properly folded towels and a good list.
That's literally me. Swipe right.
Bold, fiery and always first. Pick me if you can keep up.
Swipe left. My insurance doesn't cover spontaneous combustion.
Sensitive, nurturing, loves having cuddles in bed.
Swipe right, as long as we wash the blankets first.
Two sides, both fun. You'll never get bored.
Never get bored? Swipe left before he multiplies.
Practical, methodical and ambitious. Big fan of schedules.
Oh my god, swipe right before he starts filling in his calendar without me.
I'll treat you like a queen, as long as you remember I'm the king.
Swipe left. I don't polish crowns or egos.
Down to save the world. One protest march at a time. Let's overthrow capitalism together.
Swipe right, but I'll need to check my schedule first.
Lover of beauty, poetry and candlelit dinners. Laundry can wait.
Laundry can what? Swipe left.
Deep, intense, mysterious. I already know your secrets.
Too many passwords at stake, but I'm kind of into it. Swipe right.
Turnip enthusiast, looking for someone to get muddy with.
Oh, for heaven's sake, swipe left.
So there you have Virgo's adventures in love, lust and laundry. But romance isn't the only thing Virgo takes seriously. When it comes to well-being, no sign is more tuned into the body, or more likely to Google their symptoms. Let's have a look. Health and Virgo. We go now to the Zodiac Man, the medieval diagram that mapped each sign of the Zodiac onto a different body part. Cosmic pundits from antiquity right through to the Renaissance swore by it. One of the more colourful was 4th century astrologer Julius Firmicus Maternus, who warned, if Mercury in Virgo or Pisces is exactly on the ascendant and Saturn and Mars are in square aspect to him, they will produce madmen. Mars and Saturn on the anaphora of the ascendants or in the 8th house will make the flow of blood from the nose, mouth or anus. Better keep an eye out for that then. But long before Firmicus was writing about madmen and unfortunate plumbing, Manilius had already declared in Astronomica, the belly comes down to the maid as her rightful lot. In other words, Virgo rules the intestines, not the glamorous heart like Leo or the handsome neck like Taurus. Nope, Virgo gets the bowels. Thanks, Cosmos. But it actually makes sense. The gut is now seen as the second brain. Around 90% of the body's serotonin, which is one of the chemicals that help to regulate mood, is produced in the digestive tract. So when Manilius gave Virgo the belly, he also handed you the keys to happiness. Virgos, being born warriors, can be prone to stress, and we often feel that in our stomachs. Butterflies, knots or the full marching band, it all turns up there. Their perfectionism can also make them natural stress magnets. When life doesn't line up neatly, the nervous system lets them know about it, usually by staging a full-blown performance in the digestive tract. So a big part of Virgo's self-care is learning to calm the nerves before the orchestra strikes up. That might mean mindful eating, actually chewing food instead of inhaling it while you're doing your accounts, or gentle exercises like yoga and walking, which both soothe the belly and quiet the buzzing mind. Even something as simple as breathing exercises can convince the gut to unclench and stop rehearsing for river dance. Virgos also thrive on routine, so a regular schedule of meals, sleep and downtime can work wonders on both stomach and spirit. And since you can be prone to overthinking, practices like journaling or meditation might help take some of the pressure off your inner project manager. And remember, this is purely symbolic. If you're struggling with anxiety or digestive issues, please talk to a doctor, not your horoscope. Astrology can tell you Virgo rules the intestines, but it won't write you a prescription for diarrhea. So that's Virgo's health, intestines, serotonin and the occasional nervous tango in the belly. But let's leave the gut behind and move a little lower down the body.
I beg your pardon?
To the wallet, because next up we're talking about cold hard cash.
Wealth and Virgo.
When it comes to work and money, Virgo is the sign of order, precision and skill with the fine print. Mercury gives them quick wits and strong communication skills, while their earthly practicality keeps them grounded in the real world. The result? An ideal mix for jobs where words and details matter. Virgos make excellent teachers, writers and editors. They have the patience to polish a sentence until it sparkles, and the knack for explaining tricky ideas without making you feel daft. That same Mercury logic also makes them natural scientists, analysts and researchers. Give a Virgo a microscope, a spreadsheet or a library card and they'll be happy for hours. In the workplace, they're often the unsung heroes, catching mistakes, streamlining processes, and producing results so accurate it looks effortless, which is why more work always seems to land in their lap, because everyone knows they'll get it done properly. This is also why their desks usually look like an evidence board from a detective drama. Notes, colour-coded files, and you better not move anything. Financially, Virgos are cautious but capable. They prefer steady growth over flashy risks, such as savings, investments, or ideally building their own business, so they can finally run things their way, and the only sloppy worker to complain about is the cat. And just a reminder, this is entertainment, not financial advice. For real investment tips, talk to an expert, not the planetary rulers of wealth. Anyway, let's see what Virgo looks like in the night sky.
The constellation of Virgo.
We're talking about the biggest constellation in the zodiac and the second largest constellation in the sky, sprawling across a huge chunk of the celestial equator. If you're stargazing in the northern hemisphere, ironically you'll find it best in the spring months. In the southern hemisphere, it's a highlight of autumn evenings. It sits between Leo and Libra, which makes sense symbolically, the lion roaring on one side, the scales of justice on the other, and Virgo the maiden in between, calming everyone down. The brightest star is Spica, whose name literally means ear of corn. It's a blue giant about 250 years away, and it's often used as a handy landmark for navigation because it's one of the 20 brightest stars in the sky. Follow the curve of the Big Dipper's handle down to Arcturus, then keep going in a straight line and you'll land on Spica. Astronomers call this arc to Arcturus, speed to Spica. Now obviously the constellation itself is fixed, but the Earth's orbit around the Sun means that Virgo rises in the east and sets in the west at different times. When the Sun is in Virgo astrologically, so that's late August to late September in the tropical system, the constellation is actually hidden behind the glare of the Sun, so you can't see Virgo in the night sky while we're all talking about Virgo season. Instead it becomes visible in the opposite season, around March to July. Unless of course you're in the southern hemisphere, in which case you get to see Virgo in all its glory during the Virgo season. Which brings us to tropical versus sidereal astrology. Last time I talked about how the constellations no longer line up with the zodiac signs due to the Earth's wobbly axis, so another system was invented. Tropical astrology, the one most of us use in the West, locks the zodiac signs to the seasons, so Virgo season always begins around August 23rd, regardless of where the actual constellation is. Sidereal astrology, more common in India, keeps the signs tied to the stars themselves, so over the millennia, precession has nudged the signs out of alignment with the seasons. Now last time I said that we were going to stick to the tropical system because that's the one most people use. However, having looked at the subject more over the last few weeks, it's become even more apparent to me that sidereal was the system used by Samuel MacGregor Mathers and was considered to be the initiated astrology of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Francis King wrote in the book Ritual Magic in England, in Mathers' system, the moving or tropical zodiac is abandoned in favour of a fixed sidereal zodiac, in which the signs and constellations coincide. I've obviously been banging on about how this is a channel dedicated to ritual magic ever since the first video, so it would be remiss of me not to include sidereal astrology too. This means that if your birthday falls between September the 17th and September the 22nd, congratulations, you're still a Virgo in both systems. But if you were born between August the 23rd and September the 16th, you would be a Leo in the sidereal system. Now I don't want anyone to have an identity crisis over this, no one's taking your Virgin card away, both systems are equally valid, they just approach it differently, so I'm putting it here for anyone who's interested in the Golden Dawn system. Finally, I wanted to address a comment that I got on my last video. One of my viewers said, I like astrology as a concept, but I noticed that it's Northern Hemisphere oriented. Even the archetypes are based on the seasons that only apply to the Northern Hemisphere. It's a good system, but it doesn't work here in the South. And that's a really fair point. Astrology as it developed in the West was written from the Northern Hemisphere sky. I really want to address this because I know I've got a lot of subscribers in Brazil, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and probably lots more countries besides. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, give us a shout out in the comments. Firstly, astrology isn't just about the weather outside your window, it's about symbolism. Aries doesn't literally have to mean springtime, it's the archetype of fiery beginnings, the first spark of life. That spark still applies whether you're in Sydney in autumn or London in spring. Secondly, yes, Western astrology grew up in the Northern Hemisphere, so the seasonal imagery is northern, but that's no different from Greek mythology. You don't have to live in Athens to get the meaning of Zeus chucking thunderbolts around.
Thirdly, the archetypes are universal. Everywhere you go, there are cycles of growth, harvest, decline and renewal. They may not fall in the same months, but the pattern itself is what matters. So when we say Virgo is the harvester, we're really talking about the inner archetype of refinement, order and service, not whether you're literally threshing wheat in September. And finally, some astrologers in the south do experiment with flipping the seasons around, so that Leo becomes a winter fire sign, for example. That's an interesting alternative, but the traditional system still works perfectly well without having to invert it. So whether you're north or south, I hope you can still get some value from these videos. Anyway, now it's time to take a look at the correspondences.
Korrespondence Korner!
This is the bit where we take all the cosmic spaghetti and attempt to separate it out so we can see what goes where. Now, like all zodiac signs, Virgo's tarot correspondences are pretty spread out, so let's gather them up and see what we've got. In the minor arcana, we've got the 8, 9 and 10 of Pentacles. For the court cards, we've got the Queen of Swords and the King of Pentacles. We've got the Ace and the Page of Wands, and the Virgo trump card is the Hermit. So let's kick off with the small cards. If you were born between August the 23rd and September the 1st, you get the 8 of Pentacles. This is the card of craftsmanship, practice and dedication. You're the Virgo who gets things done through sheer effort. The cosmic apprentice perfecting their craft, one polished coin at a time. If you were born between September the 2nd and September the 11th, you get the 9 of Pentacles. This is refinement and self-sufficiency. You're the Virgo that actually enjoys the fruits of your labours, the independent spirit surrounded by abundance, but still keeping everything in perfect order. If you were born between September the 12th and September the 22nd, yours is the 10 of Pentacles. You're the Virgo who thinks in terms of continuity and tradition. This card is about home, family, and the material security that binds everything together. It shows how financial stability and a strong foundation create a safe space for ourselves and our loved ones. Now let's move on to the court cards. There's just 2 of those, but again it all comes down to which decan on the zodiac wheel you were born in. The King of Pentacles covers late Leo into early Virgo, August the 12th to September the 11th. So he straddles the handover, early mastery, financial smarts, and someone who never loses a receipt. The Queen of Swords rules from September the 12th to October the 12th, sliding right into Virgo's final decan. Sharp mind, sharp words, and not much patience for fluff. She's Virgo's inner editor with a red pen. The Page and the Ace of Wands both cover the Cancer, Leo and Virgo quadrant of the zodiac wheel, so all Virgos get those. This particular page represents curiosity, eagerness and the student spirit. For Virgo, it's that spark of wanting to learn more, to take notes, to set off on a new adventure with both excitement and nervousness. Think of it as Virgo energy before the first schedule is made. The Ace of Wands is a burst of inspiration, the divine to-do list handed down from the universe. This ace is Virgo's ignition spark, reminding them that every great plan starts with a single fiery idea. Finally, ruling over all of them is one of my favourite cards in the whole deck. The Hermit is the wise seeker, carrying a lantern, illuminating details others might miss and inspiring others to do the same. Arthur Edward Waite once said of the Hermit, his beacon intimates, "Where I am, you may also be." This is Virgo's archetype, analytical, introspective and willing to climb a mountain and guide others. And since Virgo is ruled by Mercury, the planet of communication, the Hermit doesn't just find wisdom, he's able to express it, turning quiet insight into words that can teach. As Lon Milo Duquette puts it, just look at how the Earth, Mercury and the Sun come together in the Hermit. He represents the zodiac sign of Virgo. Virgo is the mutable sign of Earth. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is exalted in Virgo. The Hermit carries the lamp of the sun, which gives his light to the world. It's as simple as that. So the Hermit doesn't just retreat into the mountain, he shines that Mercury-guided sunlit wisdom outward, becoming a beacon for others. Incidentally, a huge thank you to Lon for including the specific dates of the tarot cards. I don't know what I'd do without this book. Anyway, let's move on to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. Virgo sits on the 20th path, or the path of the Hermit, which connects Hesed to Tiferet. This is the path between mercy and beauty. It links divine benevolence with perfect harmony. In other words, Virgo is the channel that carries kindness into the heart of the tree. Virgo's Hebrew letter is Yod, which is the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, but also the seed from which all the other letters grow. Being the smallest letter, Yod is modest yet essential. That's very Virgo. Understated, service-oriented, but foundational to the whole system. Yod represents the spark of creation. It's the dot from which everything grows. Virgo can be seen as the seed planter of the Zodiac, carrying the kernel of wisdom or intention that later flourishes. In Hebrew, Yud literally means hand. Think of Virgo as the skillful hand that serves, crafts and applies knowledge with precision. Now let's shine a little light on the gemstones connected to Virgo. And if you'd like to carry a little Virgo magic around with you, the good news is that you don't have to go digging through caves with a headlamp. Our friends over at Otter Spirit have put together a gorgeous Virgo collection that includes green jade, peridot, amazonite and moonstone, all bundled into gorgeous bracelets that won't clash with your sensible shoes. They've very kindly partnered with the channel, so if you'd like to support your favourite fool and pick up some cosmic bling at the same time, you'll find the link down in the description, and you can get a 20% discount with the code KIPPY20 at checkout. Go on, treat yourself, and let the Otter Spirit guide your inner Virgo. First of all, there's green jade, the classic healer. Jade's all about health, harmony and prosperity. It keeps Virgo grounded while smoothing out that tendency to overthink every tiny little detail. Then there's peridot, Virgo's birthstone. It's protective, clarifying and helps you appreciate your own worth instead of picking yourself apart. Think of it as Virgo's personal pep talk in shiny green form. Next we've got amazonite. This one's very Mercury. It boosts clear, honest communication and calms the nerves. Basically, it's the crystal equivalent of taking a deep breath before making a speech. And there's moonstone, a softer touch for Virgo. Where the other stones sharpen and steady, moonstone connects you with intuition and emotional flow. It's like a reminder that not everything can be solved with logic and lists. So there you have it, jade for grounding, peridot for clarity, amazonite for communication and moonstone for intuition. A nice little toolkit for Virgo's mind, body and spirit. Next up we've got the herbal correspondences, and in the case of Virgo that gives us ginger, dark grapes, yams, alfalfa, yarrow, shepherd's purse and licorice. I know Ange talked about these when I made the tarot videos, but I still haven't got a clue what most of them are. Let's hand them over to our resident cosmic chef, Gordon Ramesses, and see what he can come up with.
Just before we get going, we'd like to point out that this is just for fun. Some of these herbs are inedible, some are medicinal, and some of them probably taste like crap. So please don't try these meals at home. Or anywhere else for that matter.
Alright you lovely lot, let's sort this out. We got Virgo in the house and a cupboard full of herbs that look like they've just fallen out of a witch's handbag. No worries, I'll knock up a 3-course meal quicker than you can say macrobiotic enlightenment. Before we kick off, we're going to get fancy. Dark grapes, we're talking a cheeky little red wine on the side. No meal's complete without a drop of the old claret. Starter, bit of ginger, nice and fiery, gonna wake up your system like a spiritual alarm clock. Chop it up, toss it in with a handful of alfalfa sprouts. Drizzle of olive oil, boom, you got yourself a Virgo salad. Now for the main, yams in it, bit earthy, bit starchy, roast it off, slice it up, chuck in some shepherd's purse and yarrow. Now I know those herbs sound like they were invented by a bloke who lost a bet, but trust me, sautéed up with a bit of garlic and butter, they'll taste like the very essence of the mutable earth element. Finish off with dessert, we got licorice. Most people think of the sweet shop, but nah, let's fold it into a rich herby syrup. Drizzle that over a panna cotta, proper Virgo indulgence. There you go my little cosmic foodies, 3 courses, bish bash bosh. Who knew Virgo could taste this good? Oi, get that yam chopped up before Mercury goes retrograde.
Kippy's quest, Kippy's quest. Yay!
So that's Virgo in all her glory, the grain maiden of the harvest, practical earth with a mutable twist, sharpened by Mercury's quick mind and a touch of that reflective yin energy. From Mesopotamian wheat goddess to Astræa's starry retreat, from Christian symbolism to cutting off Samson's hair, Virgo has always stood for order, refinement and a kind of quiet brilliance that holds the world together while no one's looking. Manilius once said, Virgo bestows uprightness of mind, a love of learning and power in speech. With reasoned words they sway the crowd, their wisdom shines more brightly than riches.
Thank you for joining us on our Virgo voyage. Subscribe now, or a Virgo will turn up at your house and reorganize your underwear drawer. Until next time.